I was about to say.
Got it.
I didn't even know
I don't think there's any other way to say that.
that.
All right, go ahead, Brian. And got an emergency.
I'm guessing it's Farah.
No, not me today.
Ah, you're the one in the city, so I just
You're the one in the city too.
I know, but it's not here, so
It's not me.
you.
Mhm. Although I do get cops coming by from time to time, but yeah.
All right, so we'll give it about 30 more seconds, and then we'll go ahead and kick off here. Anybody that wants to go ahead and start us off and introduce yourself in the chat, welcome to do that.
Oops. Doing that to everybody.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Conforti. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the A2 virtual discussion series, where our goal is to bring together association professionals with industry leaders and partners to bring value to the community through panel discussions, one-on-one discussions, product overviews, and other educational sessions to help your association through these challenging times. And of course, we always hope to do that in ways that are fun and engaging and try to learn from each other in the process. So these meetings take place on Thursdays bi-weekly, and recordings are always available. So today's session is about the silver lining, right? Lessons learned and lasting changes. And of course, we're talking here about COVID-19. So our peers and colleagues have been testing new ideas, modifying strategies and tactics, and all of this to adapt with the COVID-19 crisis. So today, Julie Shulo, she's CEO of Association Analytics, will lead a discussion with two association executives about a bunch of topics, really, but how 2020 has changed their associations, their organizational strategies, how they serve members, and how they interact with staff. What are some of the big lessons learned, through this crisis, and what are some of those silver linings that will last beyond 2020? And of course, we welcome input from the audience at all times. So introduce yourselves, interact with each other in the chat, and feel free to ask any questions. We do have some questions that we'll be covering, but definitely welcome additional input from the audience. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Julie and our all-star panel for introductions.
All right, thank you, Bill. Okay, so today we have Reggie Henry, Chief Information and Engagement Officer at ASAE. Many of you may know Reggie, but a great leader, as well as been extremely helpful guiding leaders and organizations through this time. And Farah Francis, Chief Information Officer of ASCD. So I always like to start out with just a just for fun question. And so we'll start with Farah. What is one thing at your home office that makes you happy?
One thing at my home office that makes me happy. I think the ability to play music while I work in the convenience of my home office. So I can jam, so to speak, to whatever I want to on Spotify, which ranges from like classical guitar all the way to reggae music. I just love the music vibe that I can play while I work and when I'm off camera or off of a conference call. It helps me to really concentrate. Yeah.
Nice. All right, Reggie, what about you?
My Nespresso machine.
I knew it. I knew that was going to be the answer.
My Nespresso machine.
So hopefully everybody at home has one thing or multiple things, hopefully, in your home office. Share in the chat what yours might be. Love to hear it. Mine is, and I don't know if you guys can see this, I'll try to turn this around. The sign that somebody bought me that was in my office and I took it home and it says good vibes only. So every once in a while when something's going right, I look down and I see it and I'm like, all right, think about the good out of this. So it's exactly what we're going to do today, right? The environment is ever changing. but we have to be able to continue to move. And Reggie and Farah are great examples of leaders who have been able to continue to move, to talk to the rest of us on how they were able to do this. So no matter how you were affected yesterday, you will find that today and tomorrow are likely to be new and different demands of you as a leader, as a contributor, whether that be to work, to personal, whatever it may be. It's constantly changing. So my conclusion to this is something like, if you fail to reinvent and adapt, what does your future really look like? Nobody wants to be there. Thinking about it in a more positive light, this is a time to reorient your teams, organizations, companies, based on the new realities that we have facing us. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So my first question posed to the panel, and either one of you can answer first, would be, what are your biggest challenges as a leader today?
So thank you again, Association Analytics. Thank you, Julie, for having us join you today. And good afternoon to everyone who's taken the time to join in this conversation. I am with the ASCD, and we focus on educators in the K-12 space. So of course, this has been a very interesting time for us. But as an IT leader at ASCD, one of the things that we face, one of the things that is a challenge right now for us is making sure we remain secure, that security remains a priority. Because now that we are teleworking and now that we are serving our members remotely, we have to make sure that their data is secure. So security is one of the challenges we're dealing with, and my team has risen to the occasion to get it done. And I think another challenge that I'm facing now, and I think most associations are, frankly, is the fact that we are all at home, our staff members are all at home, and it's that whole maintaining the culture. So culture in the time of COVID, maintaining that whole positive vibes, as you said, Julie, and making sure people remain innovative and feel as though they are part of something. I feel that's a challenge that most of us tend to deal with almost every other day. So for us, that's where I am at the moment.
So follow-up question there. What have you guys done or are planning to do to keep some of that culture at your association?
For me, I can respond.
Yeah.
For me, so I like to really build people up and keep people motivated. That's what I'm really good at, and really supporting my team. So a mix of things, you set up a whole bunch of your more frequency of the one-on-one meetings, more frequency of touch points with the staff. And then to take the monotony out of just sitting at your home where the work is as well, I have launched a series of coffee breaks, virtual coffee breaks. I tell them to bring in non-alcoholic beverage so that we can see each other on the screen, we can talk with each other, and just feel as though we are part of being in the office. And it's difficult because people are dealing with their kids at home, etc. So we work on that a lot at the office, and make sure we remind staff, hey, from time to time, do take a break, and allow for that ability for the cultural vibe of the organization to be still family based, and at the same time, while you're getting the work done, you can feel there's some sort of balance. I think COVID is putting a lot of pressure on giving people balance, because you walk right past your office desk at home, right, and you just feel inclined to go back in there and work and not take a break. And I think for me, I'm pushing for them to be more balanced.
Yeah. So Reggie, before I ask you the challenges question, Farah just made me think of something. What have you done to kind of disconnect from working at night? Because I remember way back in April or something, it was like, wow, I never leave my desk and it's dark. And so how were you able to create a little bit of that separation?
So I've got a rule now that if I don't do it, my lovely bride makes sure I do. One is I've got this office space, and it's set up as an office space, and there's nothing else to keep me in here but work. And when I leave this office space, we close the door, and that door stays closed until the next morning. And we're being fastidious about that. And she has the same thing. She has her own private office space, and when she leaves that space, we close that door, and let that be that for the day. Now, do I sneak on my iPad sometime and do something every once in a while, but not often. I think making that rule and forcing yourself to do that is not only good, it's healthy. It's healthy right now. We're all dealing with so many other pressures, having to deal with family and friends and sickness and social justice and everything else you can imagine. You need some time for those other things. So close the damn door. Just close it.
I love that advice. And that's why I think this topic comes at a perfect time, because I think people are getting fatigued. You know, we're heading into the winter months. So hopefully everybody can take something out of this that's positive, a tactic, whether that be personally or professionally, to get you through the rest of this time and really focus on those positive things.
Yeah.
So Reggie, for you, what would you say your biggest challenge is as a leader right now?
I think I've got three, and I'll keep them pretty brief. One is, and Farah hit on it, is what are you doing to take care of your people right now? Most of the associations I know have had to have some layoffs or some furloughs. Most of the folks I know have at least one person on their staff who contracted COVID. So we've got that. And so I'm lucky in that we had already had at ASAE a culture team. It's the culture and core values team. And those guys have been like stupidly phenomenal during this time with having activities for the staff, albeit online, but activities. Like we had a pumpkin carving contest for Halloween and things like that. We had let your kids in on some conversations day, where for the top part of the all staff meeting, everybody had their kids around them. So it's things like that that soothe the soul a little bit, you know? So we've done that. And so that's that challenge. Two work challenges. One of them is we've got to, and we're starting to think through having new business models. You know, one of the things that we all know, and I hope we all know this now, one, work isn't the place. We've proven that many times over now. Work isn't the place, and we've got to rethink our business models to make sure we conform to the fact that work's not the place. But for the foreseeable future, and I don't know when will be, I love events. I miss seeing Farah face to face. I mean, I miss that. But for the foreseeable future, events aren't a place either. And so what do we need to do with our business models to support that? You know, at our annual meeting this year, we had 15,000 people. Our typical annual meeting is between 4,500 and 5,500 people. And so I'm sure I'm not alone, but we've opened the doors, if you will, to a whole new population of people who haven't been able to attend ASA's annual meeting before. And so I know that our next annual meeting will be hybrid. I know that all of our events after that will be hybrid. What business model supports that? And that's it. The final challenge I have, and this I don't think it's unique to me, is making sure that our members have all of the information they need to sustain themselves through this time.
Yeah, and I think I've shared with you the feedback that ASAE has been providing great content and really been there to shepherd us through this time. So thank you and ASAE for that, certainly. One follow-up question to that, your culture committee that you had mentioned, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Who is on that team? If you know the frequency, so a tip for people out there might be putting one together, right?
Yeah,
and so if you could guide people a little bit on what the fundamentals are.
Yeah, so two things. One is that culture team is made up almost exclusively of non-senior staff members. Okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is they have a little bit of a budget to do the stuff. Doing this stuff takes money, takes time, takes resources. Three is that we didn't want it to be too big or too small. I think there's around 20 people on that team now. We're a staff of about 85 and 90 right now. And so they were tasked with doing three things. One is when they first started coming up with our cultural norms at ASAE, how we treat each other, how we work at ASAE. And once a week, somebody comes out with a culture tip. And it's usually a fun way of reinforcing how we work and how we connect with each other.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Farah, what is one norm that you had to reestablish, whether that be something personally, something within your team, something at the overall association, one norm that changed for you?
So, from an association perspective, we are in the midst of finalizing our strategic plan for the coming years. And so, one norm we have established is really driving revenue, generating ideas, products, services for the organization. As Reggie mentioned, with the cancellation of conferences, just as we were about to head to LA for a big annual meeting, we had to pull back and cancel it, and everybody moved to the teleworking environment. So we have this the norm, even in my IT shop, is let's focus on, of course, keeping the lights on and running running the IT shop, but we really have to support the revenue driving new business ideas that we're pushing out there. For my IT department, of course, is the same as I mentioned earlier, making sure there's a norm of where we check in with each other very frequently, etc. And for me personally, I think as a leader and anyone listening in this call, I think self-care is important for us to really find that balance in our lives and the balance when it comes to the work we do and how we do the work. Now, I want to just add a nugget to what Reggie said about culture. Like ASCD, we do have a culture committee, but I'll warn against, and we don't have leadership members of staff in the culture committee, just regular staff members. But sometimes when there is anxiety in the organization, you find that the culture committee tends to move into a gripe fest. And so it's imperative and it's important that whoever is in that whoever's in the leadership role of the culture committee need to make sure they steer the members of the committee back to just being more positive and being more productive and impactful. So again, for me, from an organizational standpoint, we are really focused on the strategic plan and the execution of it, and also on really driving the revenue for for our members. We recently found additive staff and engagement person who will focus on really how we make life better for our members, how we provide products and services to our members. So member engagement, member experience is now also another big push for the organization because teachers are dealing with a lot and now they have to deal with distance learning and they've not been exposed to distance learning before. So we had to pivot a little bit in terms of what we offer, what we deliver to our members for them to succeed.
So one follow-up question there, the member engagement role, is this a new role for the association, not necessarily replacement? And then how did you guys go about moving that forward? Because again, people have been very paralyzed, especially when it comes to doing new things and doing new things that cost money.
Absolutely. It's a great question. And Reggie, part of your title is engagement officer. For us, as we were building out the strategic plan, we realized that the crux of it would have been content and community being how we engage with our members, etc. ASCD has over 100,000 members here in the United States and a global footprint as well in about 65 countries. So we knew we needed someone focused on handling engagement as it wraps into marketing and sales and developing a community network for our members. We want to have a broader reach and we want to also have a major impact, a deeper impact, I should say, in the education space. So this role is a new role, first time in the organization, executive level, who's going to help drive that conversation and really push us further down the road to impact the education industry.
That's great. So kind of spinning that a different way, Reggie, I know obviously you guys are very data driven, and when you have a time like now where you can't always look back, you're kind of looking forward. Your executive dashboard or your organizational health dashboard, what are some of those metrics that you guys are looking at? Have they changed? Have they remained the same? And how are you incorporating those into your strategic plan differently as you move forward with 2021?
Yeah, good question, Julie. You know, so two things. I'll be real honest and frank and say I'm not looking so forward right now. I'm looking now. I'm looking right now because our members need help right now, and they need us to do some different things right now. And so I'm looking more now than I'm looking forward. I'm usually trying to look forward. I'm looking right now. I think in terms of our executive dashboard, it hasn't changed much. You know, one of the things that we have, and some of this is thanks to you guys, is a series of things that allow us to look at what our members are struggling with right now. What kind of questions are they asking right now? What are they searching for, either in Collaborate or on our website right now, to try to help them do. So one of the things I look at on at least a weekly basis, but it's almost daily now, is what are those critical conversations going on? How many people are involved in them? And should we be doing some just-in-time education about stuff? So that's one of my questions. I look at the measurement of culture and staff satisfaction a lot. How's our staff doing right now? Do they have the tools that they need to function in this difficult time? So I've got a little culture measurement that I use to do that right now. In terms of our overall organization metrics and things, they haven't changed much. We still have those things in place that we had in place to measure member satisfaction, to member engagement, member participation, those things. And of course, we've got those financial measurements that just don't look so good right now, but we got them.
It's good to know. Either way, I say the faster you can know and pivot, the better.
Absolutely.
You're, like many others that we've seen a huge uptick, I think 70% when it comes to executives and leadership looking at data and dashboards more frequently.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, go ahead, Reggie.
The thing I'll add to that right now is we do have to be careful, because most associations have seen their members' needs go up a notch, and probably have also seen their members' participation go up a notch. And because we're being particularly focused on that, see member satisfaction go up a notch. But it's because of this time. It's because of this time. And I think everybody's going to see slight membership, if not more than slight membership declines, satisfaction declines as we get back to what we call the normal.
Yeah.
So be careful about that.
Yeah.
That's a great tip and advice. And Farah, what about you guys? Have your key performance indicators changed, and how are you guys looking at them, and any kind of key metrics that you can share with us that you guys look at?
Yeah, Reggie is spot on. I mean, we still track some of the same things, but even more closely and more frequently. The organization is really driving to be more data driven, more so than we've ever been before, because data tells the story. Frankly, we have seen a drop in revenue, as everyone else has. And so we are really sort of tuned to membership experience, membership feedback. We are tuned to the sales, because we have products that we sell outside of books. We have learning experiences, professional learning that we sell to educators. We are also looking closely at the whole what are our members saying, and what do they want from us. Some sort of that whole customer experience, customer engagement. Really, really want to hone in on this. And sometimes we have found ourselves lacking in the past because we didn't have to deal with COVID. But now with COVID, we've had to pivot so quickly, Julie. We've had to make some fast decisions back in March to move to a virtual environment, for example, for conferences. And now we are seeing educators have an interest in it, but they still do miss that face-to-face experience. And what that decision has had, need a decision, but what it has had, the impact it has had on our bottom line. So I think we look very closely at the dollars. However, at the same time, we are committed to educators, and we know that there are a lot of factors that take place in a physical classroom that teachers have to contend. And can you imagine now being at your home as a teacher, and your classroom is now 20 or 18 different rooms dealing with different issues? And so in one room with your students, you had social emotional learning issues, etc. Now you have to deal with all of this, 17 or 18, how many students you have in your class. So we have had to pivot and create new experiences for them, for their professional learning, new experiences on how they can deliver their learning. And so we've been tracking those numbers as well, the experience, how have they been acquiring it, etc. Way much more closely than we've done in the past.
Got it. And does that are those some of the new revenue streams you talked about, or can you share with us one of those that you guys either put into place or are putting into place? Because I think, this space, we've always talked about in this industry, new revenue sources, but we've always been held back a little bit. And I think that's one of the good things that have come out of this is we've proven to ourselves that we can make decisions quickly. And people are standing up new revenue sources. So I'd love to hear how you guys, what one of those are and what was the process of getting it into place and out to the market.
Certainly. So think of learning and think of education. And so what we did starting in March, we just pivoted to this whole concept of professional development pathways. And so we focus on different pathways of learning. So in addition to what we always offer, we've decided, well, here we're dealing with COVID, here we're dealing with loss, here we're dealing with people dealing with stress and depression. So we created a professional development pathway on self-care, a professional development pathway on social emotional learning. And what we did with that to drive the revenue even further, the pathway includes access to our books on the topic, access to our webinars and our articles and our flagship newsletter, and of course other learning instruments that we offer. So we've developed since the beginning of all of this, COVID and being at home, Julie and Reggie, we've developed like 5 to 6 different pathways. One we did on leadership to empower educators who still have a drive to be a principal level in their career. However, we see all educators, regardless of the grade within which they teach, that they are all leaders. So we created this pathway called leadership. So regardless if you teach kindergarten or you're an assistant principal or a principal, you can certainly have access to ASCD's content. So that in itself was my IT team building all these pathways quickly, flipping it on, and the sales team and the marketing team marketing it, selling it, and just driving and letting people know, hey, a new pathway is out. And get it going. And it's been an interesting but good journey for us so far, and it's been well received.
Yeah,
again, that whole pivot, really that change.
Yeah, really impressive to be able to make that pivot and commitment and get new resources out to members. So that's really great. And Reggie, so you talked about kind of this whole new pool of people, and we're seeing that across the board now that we're able to reach a little bit further to different geographies, different demographics, whatever it may be, and pulling new people in. What are you guys doing to keep those people engaged?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One of it, I'm going to answer part of the question you asked, talked to Farrah about, because I think one of my major focuses has been, and I hope everybody's thinking about this, is our industry partners. And a lot of the revenue that a lot of associations get comes from their industry partner community, those people who are associate members or vendors, or call them what you want to call them. But their main source of revenue with us was through exhibiting at the big meetings or sponsoring at the big meetings. And so one thing we did, we created this thing called demo days. And at our first demo days, we had, and I'm telling you this for a reason, at our first demo days, we had 960 people sign up for a day and a half of demos about virtual event platforms. 930 of those people were online looking at vendor platforms for 8 hours over the course of that day and a half.
Wow.
I can't get our vendors that kind of exposure any other way. So we went from an expectation that our vendors have of coming out of that meeting with 10 to 12 leads to those vendors, and I've talked to most of them, leaving that day with 3 or 4 clients. And so I'm saying all this to say, we've got to start to reimagine the business proposition that we have for our industry partners and create things that we might not have been able to or might not have thought about creating before. So that in terms of engaging people, we've done a couple of things. One is, though we had a 3-month moratorium on dues for a while, which helped all of our members, quite honestly. And we had a few of those folks, a big few people join at that time so they can say, okay, I can go in and I don't have to pay dues for 3 months. This is a good deal. But I think the thing that we're doing the most right now is listening and creating just-in-time content. That's the thing that's driving us right now, is these just-in-time. And I see Pia in there. Hello, Pia. My wife just started working at the organization Pia works for. But we've done roundtables at a pace that's amazing. You know, at least one roundtable a week for CEOs and often other roundtables during a week for other groups where they can get together and have these kind of discussions and help solve their own problems with each other. So the peer-to-peer networking is at an all-time high for us right now. But the listening piece and the just-in-time thing is what's sustaining those new folks right now.
Yeah, I think that goes back to meeting member needs when it's happening and being able to do that immediately, which it sounds like, and I've seen it, you guys are doing in real time, which is amazing. And I know even before you were doing some of that, but what do you think the challenge was pre-COVID on why we couldn't get there, many of us in the industry, with making those just-in-time decisions and just-in-time, you know, content to the market and kind of meeting the market where it was?
Because we're goofy. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it's just,
you know, you think
you have to, I guess.
You know, you think about it. And this is, I had this conversation with our staff and got really frustrated with it. When we're creating a new product, we get so innovative and thoughtful, and we're fast, and we come up with these new products. The minute that product or service is created, it's all about selling it. That's what it becomes. And so you've got things in your budget and you're trying to meet budget, and all of that stuff is so anti-new, so anti-innovation, so anti that. What happened with COVID, and we've learned that lesson, is that forget all of that. Your members need this right now. Are you going to provide them with this right now or not?
Yeah.
And so the necessity of not doing some things was right there at our front porch. And thank God we crossed over to do that. But I think there's some lessons for us to learn now, that this protectionism that we have about our department or our products or our services is not the brand that we want to have. The brand that we want to have is meeting our members at their point of need. And when that changes, we have to change.
Yeah. That's great advice.
But we're goofy. That's all, we just goofy.
No, that was really insightful, though, thinking about how decisions were made before and why decisions. And I think that's one of the positives that come out of the pandemic in general, is really it brought people together in many different ways. You know, it brought people together to meet people's families. I've met grandmothers. I've met, you know, just being in this environment. And then it also brought us together as organizations to strive to what's important. And that was caring about your constituents, caring about your customers, caring about your members.
So think about that. Think about that. And we're no different than other organizations. I hope what we have proved to ourselves is that there's a much bigger market, all associations, for our products and services than we've given ourselves credence for. And that our pricing strategies and our expectations of our members to travel everywhere all the time affects our business strategy. And this is in no way saying that face-to-face isn't important. Face-to-face is critical. I think what we have to start to think about is that face-to-face experience, the next time we do it, is going to have to be so doggone special. For people to risk what they're going to have to risk to be there. And the education, the panel, the talking heads thing like we're doing here right now, that doesn't necessarily need to be there. That ability for people to connect with each other and share experiences and that human stuff is going to be much more important than it ever has been. So we got to be thoughtful about that.
I think if I should add as well, well said, Reggie. I think, and Julie, you're right, the silver lining, right? The silver lining of all of this has forced our organizations to really get out of the silos on how we operate and really collaborate better. and also come up with new ideas to support the people we serve, our members, the people who are responsible for why we exist, our members. And so now, no longer do you have X department try to build um, their little kingdom versus Y department. Now everyone is realizing we have to come together and build this experience for members. And what we did as well, we put together a cross-functional group of people that came up with an idea for a 7 p.m. webinar for principals, school principals. We just
Mm-hmm.
invited all school principals, join us on a call and just share and powwow, so to speak, what's going on. Their own little kumbaya as to what's going on in their lives now that they are in a distance learning environment as a school principal. And so they were able to learn from a principal in Florida what's happening in her little city versus a principal in Oregon. And we just had this, and we had this for a series of Wednesday night calls at 7 p.m. Successful. So it just forced us. I mean, as you know, just forced us to really think and do things differently.
Right.
And by the way, to keep that engagement going, we didn't charge anything. That was just open forum, come and discuss it. It's not always all about collecting money, but at the end of the day, it's like serving your members better and showing up for them.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what are other ways you think your association will come out of this in a stronger position? I know you've already mentioned quite a few, but can you think of anything else that you might add on coming out of this in a stronger position?
A leaner environment, I think COVID and the revenue impact will force us to think differently with the spend, think differently with how we are organized, will force the association for people to stretch themselves a little bit further. And I think once we start using the creative ways right now for broader impact and reach, we will find that we expect that post-COVID, we come out with a wider array of members who support education and creative ways for us to deliver our content. As Reggie said, we feel that eventually in-person meetings will come back, but I think virtual will remain a thing for some people. I think some people would just say, I prefer virtual instead of hopping on a plane. And just that whole new way of how we curate, in our case, we are a publisher as well, how we curate content and drive personalization. This is what COVID is forcing us to do, to use the data, create better personalization and create better user stories so that our members, the content we curated them is appropriate. And so we are driving this whole Netflix sort of experience where, based on what you've watched, we recommend this. So we're building all of that sort of stuff out. So it's really driving creativity from a technological point of view, a business point of view, more innovation. And for us, we hope to come out in a more digital transformative. And this is not a buzzword, and it can be a buzzword, but we really want to be that whole digital first sort of organization. So that's what we are hoping to accomplish out of all of this.
I'm sitting here thinking about the lessons we've learned that I've already seen us start to adapt. One of them is decisions don't have to take the amount of time it did in the past. It just did. COVID hit. We were all home on a Monday, and our membership and marketing conference was 2 weeks away.
Wow.
And so what we had to do was make that virtual in 2 weeks. And you know what? We did it. It worked fine. We had 3,000 people there, and everything was just fine. And nobody had any scars, and none of that happened. But as Farah mentioned, the whole organization had to do some things different to make that happen. And at that time, we didn't care about which department were people are in. We didn't care about whose title was what. We said, these are the things that need to be done. Let's form some cross-functional teams to get it done. So I hope we have learned new ways of working. Second thing I hope we've learned is pace, organizational pace. For us to be relevant to our members in their times of need, we have to hasten our pace. And I don't mean work fast recklessly. What I mean is modify our existing business process to get rid of all the stuff that makes us slow. How many meetings do we have to have about something before a decision needs to be made? How many people have to be at a meeting for the organization to trust that that meeting did what it needed to do? It's those kinds of business process things that we've shortened in this time. And you know what? We haven't had many problems because of it. So those two things, but I know I keep talking about these business processes all along the way,
It's
but
critical.
we've got some legacy business processes in place and some legacy business structures in place that hold us back. And we didn't pay attention to them during COVID. And you know what? We did just fine. We
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. And ultimately, we're able to make decisions faster and meet your members at a time of need. So I think that's definitely a positive that you could take it, that anybody here can take into account going forward. And you touched on a couple of these, but what else would you say as an industry as a whole, some things that will bring us out in a stronger position? One of those being breaking down the silos, of course, making decisions quicker. Anything else that you can think of as being kind of a positive for the industry as we move forward post-pandemic?
So, Reggie, you mentioned business process. I think
Yep.
that's a struggle for most organizations. I'll be honest with you. One of the one of the backbones, so to speak, or the paths for our digital transformation journey is this whole concept of operational backbone review. And the operational backbone is just everything in the operations that make us run as an organization. And in reviewing that, we realize that some of the business processes are just so antiquated and keeping us back in the past. And so it's been a bit of a struggle to recognize that and to make us see, oh wow, we really need to face this head on and make some decisions about it. For sure, Julie, one of the things we will need to address to make us be even a better organization is reimagining the business process to get things done. I mean, if it means coming down to doing like journey mapping, etc., to get things done better, because that's where the pace and the speed are impacted. I think also just putting on a very business, just driving in the organization, everyone wearing this business hat. You know, this is just not a little nonprofit, but it's a business that we are here to serve members and at the same time make some money. And then if anybody watches the Shark Tank, I just got into it with COVID. I've been watching the Shark Tank. I now got it on Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, make money, you know, but but, not, but I don't want us to think we are being greedy for money. But at the end of the day, we have to have some profit margins that allow us to be sustainable and for us to
Absolutely.
succeed. So I think that's part of it as well. Reggie?
So I hear you. So my saying is no margin, no mission.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
so true.
no margin, no mission. The other thing that I hope all of us have learned during this time is the thankfulness that our members have when we're meeting their needs.
Mhm.
Okay, not selling them products, when we're meeting their needs. And so my question would be, does everybody have a way of ascertaining what their members need? I'm not talking about guessing. I'm not talking about your strategic plan. Do you know what your members need? We did a customer behavior study um, during this time of COVID. So thank you all of our members who are on this call who participated. So thank you for that. But what it did for our staff was put our members' needs in their voices. And what came out of that was such richness that I'm going to do something annually to make sure that we know what our members' needs are. It really did come out in a way that told us, here's the things your members want you to maximize, here's things they want us to minimize. So Julie, at some point in time, we'll do some session about how we did that, because I think it was gold for us. But most associations, and us included, don't have a structured formal process for gathering member need. And so our members did us a favor. They expressed their needs very vocally and very often and very clearly during this time. And so we've got to capture that. We've got to make it okay that happens all the time.
Yeah. People have things to say, but if they're not asked, right, they're not always going to say it. So I think that's really important. And definitely we could do, I know somebody asked for more, we could definitely do a session on talking a little bit more about that. And again, how then you're serving those member needs in just in time, breaking down those kind of legacy business processes and moving forward with what matters, really.
Absolutely.
So taking us back to March, April, and some people, and the reason I'm asking are some people are still at this stage where they're frozen. Is there something that you can remember that helped your organization move forward? Or was there a time where the executive leadership came together and said, we're just, moving forward? Anything that you guys recall happening back in that time to move forward? Because both of you guys are at organizations and have been innovative leaders during this time. But we certainly have people in our audience and in our industry that are still scared to make a decision on anything. And so anything that you guys can remember, or was it just, that's what you did? I don't
know. No. Go ahead, Farah.
No, you go first because I was about to get clarification. You could go.
Yeah. So, part of this is your organization's culture and mindset. And, the number of organizations, Julie, that I saw come out of this because they had an old policy that staff should only have desktop computers, for example. Mm. What the hell? Excuse me, my French folks, but, people saw this as a technology problem. And it wasn't. It was a business continuity problem. They had not planned for the fact that their business needed to be able to continue in any situation. So I hope people learn that there's a difference between technology issues and business continuity issues. And they start with realizing that work is not a place. Work is stuff that has to get done, and you owe it to your staff that they can do it wherever they happen to be. So from that perspective, that wasn't a shock for us. We've had for the last 5 to 10 years a laptop only policy unless you had a special situation. And we started using Microsoft Teams 2 or 3 years ago. And so we closed down the office on Friday and everybody was at work on Monday. So that wasn't the problem. The problem was the people stuff. And how do you transition people's mindsets in this really stressful time, and allowing them to care for themselves and their families and still get work done. That was the transition. And so again, having this culture team in place that was able to add some levity to all of that was a boom. What I think we also learned, and the people who supervise other people had to learn, was you cannot supervise people by the walk around and see if they're there method. Okay? In fact, maybe you shouldn't have been supervising people. I even hate the word supervise. Maybe we should have been managing, not supervising people, but managing work.
Yeah.
Managing work. That's what needs to get done. People don't need to get done. Work needs to get done. So I think we learned that lesson too. And we came out of that stronger from that point of view, is that people are now managing work as opposed to managing people.
Yeah.
So Julie, spot on, Reggie. I agree with you. So we transitioned without any issues. We had all the equipment, the technology ready for folks to go. Brand new laptops had been purchased about 5 months prior for every staff person, and there was an all laptop policy at ASCD. So we moved on easily. Left on Friday. Thought we were going to be home for 2 to 3 weeks. Here we are, 9 months later. Right? That's like, are we not going back till next June of 2021? But here's the deal. I think one of the things we had to do was train managers to understand that it's a different environment with when back to school took place. So we have some staff members who have to be at home with their children and be there as they go through their online school and then work later hours in the evening. So what has happened is that people have learned to understand that the work day has changed for some people. So instead of starting at 9 to 5, it actually starts at 3 p.m. onwards because they have childcare issues to attend to. And so for us, we were ready to move on. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to whisper this. I won't be surprised if some associations don't go back to the office.
Yeah.
And in the association space, you never hear full work from home. But when you have Microsoft has announced and Twitter, I believe, has announced, and all these giants have announced that, hey, you can work from home forever. I shudder to think what will happen to commercial real estate. However, I think some organizations are not going back to the building because I'll be honest with you, work from home works. I think you have to work out the kinks with what equipment you buy for people. Like people wanted a chair or little things like that. And that's a policy you'll have to put in place for your respective organization, for people who want a printer, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
it works for us when we by the time we transition to teleworking.
Yeah.
And if you add on top of that, Farah, the fact that we're all trying to be more digital and
Mm-hmm.
learning how to be more digital,
Mm-hmm.
then the need for that we might have had for everybody to have a printer, for example,
Right.
that some of those things just start to go away.
True.
And my,
True.
and
Mm-hmm.
my goal is for our staff to um, at some point in time, if all you've got in front of you is an iPad or a mobile phone, why can't you get your work done? There shouldn't be any reason why you shouldn't be able
Can't
to.
get it work done. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can
so
beat you back with one. We had one person where she lives, there was not good enough Wi-Fi. So she used to commute even while we were working from home. Poor thing had to drive to the office, Judy, like 3 times a week to get enough work done
right.
because where she lived, Wi-Fi was not
Available.
accessed. Yeah, it is some part in the rural, some part of Maryland. That was the story.
So speaking of that, what I'm at least thinking about, we haven't thought all the way through it yet, but your staff didn't used to have to worry about their Wi-Fi
Yeah.
at their home to
Yeah.
get more work done. Your staff didn't have to worry about sitting in one of their creaky chairs in their home while the ergonomic chair was at work to get their
Right.
work done.
Mm-hmm.
They're still doing your work. So at some point, I am thinking about what do we need to outfit staff with to be able to do the work that the organization requires it to do. And if
Yeah.
that means if somebody happens to live in a rural area and you
Right.
got to pay a little bit extra to make sure that they have Wi-Fi access and you still expect them to get that work done,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe you should be helping them do that. So I think there's some new norms that we'll have to think through to make this work the way I know it can work.
Yeah. Yeah, that goes back to the point that it's not necessarily a place, right? It's something that happens and it can happen from anywhere. And so,
Great point. Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. Again, rethinking those legacy business processes, the legacy idea of what work is. And you guys offered some great advice and tips. So the last thing I want to ask is any kind of last advice that you want to offer leaders who are still struggling as the pandemic drags on. Like I said, we're kind of at this point where people are over it. And so to reinvigorate people, what would be some advice that you might have for some of those leaders?
So it's a mix for me. I mean, I can give an advice, but I may need some as well because it
Right.
depends on the way your team is built out and the personalities of your team. Sometimes they thrive better, Julie, face to face, in person. I mean, and so sometimes you're having these meetings or you're having your coffee breaks, and you're like, "Am I getting through?" Because people are just so overwhelmed right now, dealing with family issues, etc. And as a leader, I tend to focus on really building my team and driving them to thrive and succeed. And so I feel that one advice I'll give is consider people first. I think once you have that people first concept towards your leadership style, it is felt by your team members and they follow suit and they are able to do their work and get things done. But still, it's a struggle. I'll be honest with you. If I may be very candid, it could be very trying sometimes because on any given day you don't know what people are going through and you just don't know if they're present, and it's difficult. And sometimes people want to share and sometimes they don't want to share. And you could ask but so many questions. But honestly, I think one advice is to always push for a people first agenda. Check in on your team members, let them know that you care and that you're listening and that you really value their well-being in this work from home pandemic era. It's just so many layers right now for working from home. So the silver lining is it pushes us to just stretch ourselves as leaders and find creative ways to meet your team. And if anyone in the chat has any cool ideas they can share as well to meet and to reach the more what's the word, people who are very quiet, introvert sort of personalities, then we welcome it, because sometimes it's difficult for introverts not being a part of the organization. Physically, I think some people are struggling with that remote experience.
Yeah, great advice. Reggie, what about you?
Yeah, I think, and some of this is going to echo things that Farah said. I think that it's really important right now to assume the best of people. It really is, to assume that your staff's doing the work. And if you're managing the work, you know whether or not they're doing the work, but assume the best of people right now. You know, a book that I read every 2 or 3 years just to keep myself in check is a book called Emotional Intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a number of them around, but they really make you, invite you to be introspective about your own role, and not only your own life, but in your staff's and colleagues' life. So do that. This focus on the work, you know, that to me that's critical. The other one is the pace has to quicken for us, and it has quickened for us, and we've got to get comfortable with the pace at which we need to meet our members at their point of need. And I think people think that I'm asking them to rush. I'm not asking you to rush. What I'm asking you to do is to think deliberately, but act quickly. Okay. Yeah. And if you think deliberately and thoughtfully about things, you can act quickly. You know, where we fail is when we start thinking fast and acting fast at the same time.
Yep.
And that doesn't work. So just be thoughtful about it. But we've learned how to meet our members at their point of need in ways we haven't done before. And we've got to figure out what business models need to be in place, what organizational structures need to be in place for us to continue to do that.
Yeah. So great advice. I think we have a lot of takeaways that we got from you guys. So I really appreciate it. You know, when we think about how do we move forward, I think some of the things that you guys touched on, certainly being able to make decisions quickly to kind of get over that hump, and not to the point you're reckless, but the point where you want to continue to meet members and members' needs. And so a lot of great advice on personal care as well as professional. So I want to thank you guys and turn it over to Bill to wrap up.
All right. Thank you, Julie. Thank you to Farah and Reggie. This was really an awesome session. It's one of those ones where I feel like some of us will be going back and listening to the recording. There's a lot of good quotes in there. Like you could make like one of those tear off calendars or something like that with these quotes. Yeah, again, thank you very much. It was really great. So our next webinar is actually in 2021 because of our cadence and the holidays and everything. We'll be meeting you all again in 2021. Until then, I want to encourage everybody to sign up for ASA Tech. And Reggie, of course, will appreciate that very much as well. So, and if you're missing A2 between now and then, we have a few things going on. We, of course, have our booth. You can come by and chat with us there. Julie has a session where she'll be talking about fast data in the association space. We have this really awesome science fair style presentation with some colleagues in the association space. And lastly, the first annual Ultimate Data Championship, which is a visualization competition. It's going to be really fun. Some people on the call here actually have created some visualizations using a common data set. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see what they came up with. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and we look forward to continuing discussions just like this in the new year.
Thank you guys.
Great.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.